Welcome to Fantasy Insider's preview of tonight's AFL game between Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn. My name is Blake, and with me is Darryl Woodford, co-founder of Fantasy Insider. Now, before we move on to tonight's game, Darryl, last weekend, you had a good one. You had a very successful weekend coming first in both Moneyball's $5,000 tournament and also first in DraftStar's $12,500 tournament. Now, was there anything you learnt from last weekend, Darryl?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I mean, in terms of learnings, nothing perhaps new, but certainly some interesting things. I think the contrarian strategy worked well. I think last week we talked about how the algorithm was spitting out a lot of Western Bulldogs players. And of course, they ended up smashing West Coast, which was sort of a reversal of what the bookmakers were expecting. And that kind of contrarian strategy, I think, works really well because it means you're competing against maybe 10% of the field for the prize money rather than 80% if you go with the favourite.
Yeah. Was it the team that won? Was it your stack team, or?
Yeah, so the lineup that ended up winning, I think, had a 6-player Western Bulldogs stack. So in that contest, I put in a few that were stacked with West Coast players, a few that were stacked with Western Bulldogs players, and a mixture. I think one of the Western Bulldogs stacks won, and one of the mixed lineups came sort of in the money as well.
Yeah, were you coming first the whole way through, or where were you placing towards the end? I know Isaac Smith missed the last shot in the last minute. Did that influence the points?
In that Geelong Hawthorn game, I was sort of trailing by, I think, 4 points. And then Isaac Smith took the mark, which was worth 3 points, so I was 1 behind. And at that point, if he kicked the behind, then I tied for first, which is what I ended up doing for about $2,000. But then if he'd got the goal there, I'd have won 2,500. So it was quite a big swing on that game, on that one kick. I mean, I'm not a big scoreboard watcher. I normally don't sort of look at it too much until sort of halfway through the fourth quarter. It just drives you nuts otherwise.
Yeah. I had a bit more of an unsuccessful game, unfortunately, but hopefully you're looking for a better one this weekend.
Yeah, you got the right tips.
Yeah. In tonight's game with Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn, who do you think will walk away with the win?
The bookies, I think, have Hawthorn about a 10.5-point favourite, and I don't think we diverge too much from that of the algorithm. We see, in the optimal lineups, at least, a mixture of players from both teams. Strategy-wise, I think the same approach is going to work. While the bookmakers have it close, a lot of close games on the paper end up as blowouts for one team or the other. And stacking lineups in a similar way that I just talked about, sort of 6 players from one team at least, will put you in a good position to be competing against just a few entries if that team ends up with a blowout win. Yeah.
How are you going to approach this weekend's contest? Like any other specific strategies that you're planning on using, or?
I think it's just a case of mixing up your lineups. So, I mean, there's 2 sets of contests. Right? There's the contests that take in both games. I mean, in those, it's worth noting, I think the Sydney-Adelaide game has about a 10-point higher total, which obviously isn't a ton, but it's worth noting. Sydney are favourites in that one. So what I'll probably do in sort of the full round contest is stick in a few stacks that are Sydney-based or that are Hawthorn-based. I did that last week in the Moneyball Saturday Slam, where I had a lineup that sort of had 7 or 8, I think, Adelaide players in, and that was the lineup that sort of came storming through and won quite comfortably in the end.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I know you like to play tournaments mostly. Not everyone does play tournaments. With head-to-heads, do you have any advice there?
So it's basically the complete opposite advice for head-to-heads, I guess. What you want to do there is not expose yourself to a particular outcome. So if you have a mix of players from both teams, you pick sort of the steady scorers rather than those who might have a great game or might have a terrible game. You're going to put yourself in good contention in head-to-heads. A lot of people just stick the same lineup in for head-to-heads as they do for tournaments. And I always want to play those players in head-to-heads because they're very, very beatable.
Yeah. Are there any players you think that people listening should have in their lineups for tonight's game?
I think there's a couple of players on each team. I think Jordan Lewis and Isaac Smith, despite his costing me money last week, are both decent options for Hawthorn. And Muggers Bontempelli for Bulldogs. Josh Dunkley, I think, is also a decent option at DraftStars. I think they're probably the 4 that will be reasonably consistent across my lineups. And then there'll be other players that I drop in and out.
Cool. Well, that's all we have for today's game. Remember, if you're playing a tournament, think about your stacking options. Expose your lineups to different match outcomes. On the contrary, if you're playing cash games, look at consistency in your team and make sure you have a mix of players from both teams. Good luck in tonight's contest. Team Fantasy Insider, hope you get a win.